Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Nathan and today I am pleased to present D&D build number 28, a build I am entitling the Initiative Support. This is going to be a 2024 rules build combining actually the Paladin with the Bard to make a powerful ranged support character. So here is our agenda for this video. I'm going to introduce and talk about the concept of the build, and then I'll go through the build from level 1 to level 17, and at each kind of our key thresholds, those being level 6, 9, 13, and 17. I'm going to give a tactics report on this build and talk about kind of the things that they're capable as well as presenting some potential tactics you can use if you want to output more damage on this character. And then I'll kind of summarize and talk about the build as a whole and give some alternate options. All right, so yeah. So introduction and build concept. So the goal of this build is to win initiative and allow another character who can have a high impact to go first. So at its core, this build is going to be around the 2024 version of the alert feat, which the alert feat says that we get to add our proficiency bonus to our initiative, and then we can swap initiatives with one willing ally at the start of each combat. Now, important thing to note, one of the goals of this build, it's not to get our initiative as high as possible. Building for max initiative alone has diminishing returns. Winning initiative by 1 point is the same as winning initiative by 10 points. So you have still 1. And so, we don't need to min-max for the highest possible initiative. We just need to get our initiative good enough to win most of the time. Another thing about this character, this is going to be a pretty durable, support-oriented character who can deal their damage from range. One of the goals I had with this character was that I wanted them to be an archer. You don't have to do it this way. You can do a melee character, but either way you go, having a reasonably high dexterity score is pretty much something that any character who is going to build for initiative is probably going to want. In terms of what you can do with high initiative, there's a lot of ways to get it. You can make a high initiative board for damage. You can make one for support. You can make one for control, some combination thereof, or even more. But this is specifically going to be a support-oriented build. I will talk more about some of those options that you can have to get a higher initiative coming up here before we dive into the build as a whole. One of the things with this character being a support character, I think if you're going to go for this kind of build where you want to win initiative and then give it away, I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense necessarily to build for damage on that character, because if you win initiative and you have really good damage, you should probably use that first turn to do that damage yourself. So if you're going to go first and give it away, your character should probably be support oriented, which is kind of how I arrived at this particular build. Another thing this character is going to have is this character is going to be very mobile and able to leverage that mobility to assist their allies. We're going to have a pretty interesting set of abilities to reposition our allies and get them either into or out of trouble. The books that you will need for this character, you will need the 2024 Player's Handbook, as well as the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount for one particular spell that I want to use. Otherwise, again, everything you need for this build is in the Player's Handbook, and that spell is by no means critical, and you can definitely retool this build to do a lot of different things, and I will discuss some alternate options to that spell when we get to that point in the build. All right. So ways that you can boost initiative. I just want to share some of the things I went through when designing the concept for this build. There was a lot of research I did that went into this, and just because this is the build that I arrived at doesn't mean this is the best way to do this or anything, but it was the option that I found to be the most interesting. All right. So the first way that you can boost your initiative is find a way to add your proficiency bonus. Now, per the rules, your proficiency can only be added to your initiative once. There are 3 main ways to do this. There's the origin feat, which I'm going to be building around. You can be a Harengon, which gets to add their proficiency bonus with a racial feature, or you can be a level 7 or higher Watcher's Paladin. But since we can only add our proficiency bonus to any roll once, we want to use alert so we can swap, so we don't need to necessarily use the other 2 options here. Next way that you can do it is add a mental attribute. And so this is an additional attribute in addition to dexterity. So the War Wizard or the potential Chronologist Wizard, if that subclass is allowed, those can add their intelligence. The Gloomstalker Ranger gets to add their wisdom modifier, and the Swashbuckler Rogue gets to add their charisma modifier. The third way, of course, is just high dexterity. This kind of goes without saying. The next way is there's a lot of ways you can potentially add or subtract a dice with class abilities. So the Dance Bard can use Bardic Inspiration with a level 6 class feature to add that role to everybody, basically. The Stars Druid can potentially boost or decrease a roll with their Wheel or Woe option. The Battlemaster Fighter can use their Ambush Maneuver to add a superiority dice to their initiative roll. The Fiend Warlock can use their Dark One's own luck feature to add, I think it's a D10. And there are more things than these from spells and the like. These are mainly just like subclass and subclass features. Another way, of course, is to get advantage on the initiative roll. Level 7 Barbarians get to do this regardless of subclass. A level 3 Assassin Rogue has this. If you get the invisible condition, you have advantage on initiative rolls. You can use heroic inspiration to give yourself advantage on initiative, which you can get by being a human or doing cool things in game that your DM awards it for, or having something like the musician feat. You could also use the lucky feat, origin feat, and use those to give yourself advantage on initiative. You can use something like Tides of Chaos from the Wild Magic Sorcerer. There's a lot of ways to do this, and there are even more ways with spells like Enhance Ability. And finally, there's some other things that you can do. Like, for example, you can use a portent if you're a divination wizard to set an initiative roll, either yours or someone else's, to a specific value. And of course, there are spells like Enhance Ability, Gift of Alacrity, which is the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount spell. If you have Pass Without Trace to boost your stealth, that'll make hiding easier. And if you can successfully hide, you get the invisible condition and get advantage. Invisibility can get you the invisible condition for advantage. And remember, it's only a DC 15 stealth check to get the invisible condition via the hide action. And again, there's lots of ways to do an initiative build. You could do a Gloomstalker Ranger with Battlemaster. You could do a True Strike Stars Druid with Gloomstalker. You could do a Dance Party with Swashbuckler, etc. And I will cover a few more of these in the summary of this video very briefly. All right, so for this build in particular, at level 1, how are we going to start our ranged initiative-based support? Well, as you saw on the title screen, this is a Paladin and a Bard build, and I'm going to be starting with Paladin. And yes, we're doing a build that is a Paladin. It's going to be multi-class, and it's going to be Dexterity primary. And yes, this is actually going to end up working out just fine, and I will show you how in just a few minutes here if you stick with me. All right, so as a Paladin, we get proficiency in Wisdom and Charisma saves. We get a couple Paladin skills. We get proficiency with simple unmartial weapons, as well as proficiency with light armor, medium armor, heavy armor, and shields. Now, Paladin is going to provide some key martial and support abilities, and one of the cool things is that under the 2024 rules, they get access to all the fighting styles, which means we will get access to the Archery fighting style at Paladin level 2. We also get Lay on Hands here. We get a number of points equal to 5 times our Paladin level, and we can use it as a bonus action. We get our spell casting, and the number of spells we can prepare now is flat set. At this point, we can prepare 2 and have 2 first level slots. I would probably prepare Bless and Divine Favor here. Bless is a great support spell, and Divine Favor is great as a damage writer and will be something we'll be using throughout our career. Now remember, the rules for Paladin spellcasting have changed. While we can't swap out our entire spell list every long rest, we can swap out 1 spell per long rest. We also get Weapon Mastery with 2 weapons of our choice, and we can swap out all of these every long rest. So for our first mastery, you're going to want to take the ranged weapon of your choice. So either the longbow with Slow, the hand crossbow with Vex, or the short bow with Vex. You also could potentially do a heavy crossbow with Push. And then for our second one, I want the dagger with Nick. And the big thing about the dagger here is that because it has Nick, we can potentially, throw a dagger without spending a bonus action if we attack with another light weapon. So at the beginning here, our best DPR option is to shoot a hand crossbow, which has the light property, and then throw a dagger using that Nick mastery. Now, if you want to go great Weapon Master on this build for more damage, which is something I'm not going to be doing on this version of the build. The longbow is really good because we're not going to be ever taking crossbow expert, and of course, daggers can also be used in melee if you get stuck there. For the sake of the damage numbers, I'm going to be showing in this build, which again, it's not the focus. I'm going to be using the hand crossbow, but in a real game, I would probably go to the longbow or the short bow potentially with daggers as a backup. All right, for our starting equipment, let's get either studded leather or scale. I would take a hand crossbow, 5 daggers, a holy symbol, and a component pouch. And obviously, you can spend a lot less on ranged weapons if you want to. Again, the hand crossbow has a marginal damage per round advantage over the other options at early levels due to having the light property. If you want max support or control, take the longbow. Again, I'm not ever planning on taking crossbow expert on this version of the build, so once we get extra attack, it'll only ever be max 1 attack with a crossbow anyway. For our background, we're going to use a custom background per the guidelines in the 2024 Dungeon Master's Guide. So the main things we want here are the ability to boost our dexterity and our charisma, as well as the alert feat. The other things you can pick as you want. For your skills, make sure you get stealth, and the other one can be something of your choice. I might take Arcana, as well as a tool that potentially might align with what kind of magic items I might want to craft. You might want to take like leatherworkers tools or potentially like weavers tools to be able to craft robes, maybe woodcarvers tools to craft bows or stabs and that kind of thing. But yeah, I probably wouldn't take leatherworkers, to be honest, because we're not planning on wearing armor in the long term, at least past character level 9. But depending on where you end up in your levels, it just depends on what you can do and whether crafting is available in your game. So for our ability scores, we're using the point buy method as always here, and we're going to get a 13 in strength. This is going to be only because it's a prerequisite to multi-class out of Paladin. Although this does mean that you'll meet the prerequisite for the Great Weapon Master feat if you want to boost your damage. Then we're going to take a 15 in dexterity and put our +1 there. We're going to take a 12 constitution. We're going to dump both intelligence and wisdom, and then do 15 charisma +2. And this gives us a starting hit points of 11. Now, you may be thinking, what? 12 constitution? Now, don't worry. We're going to fix the HP issue, and it's really going to be a non-issue on this build. Even though, it might seem like our constitution saving throws are going to be low, it's actually not going to be that big of a deal for this character, and maintaining concentration is not something I believe you'll have a problem with in the long term. So, why am I not concerned about 12 Constitution? Well, we are going to be a human out of the 2024 Player's Handbook. And the big things here, we get resourceful, so we gain heroic inspiration every time we finish a long rest. We get an extra skill proficiency, and we get an extra origin feat, which I'm going to use to take tough, which makes our hit points 13 instead, and this is just as many hit points as we would have if we had 16 Constitution. So if you've seen my video about dumping Constitution and getting away with it, and I'll put a link to that up over there, this is a kind of a stat spread that's enabled by that tactic, and because of the tough feat, we are able to get away with dumping our Constitution down to 12 and still have a reasonable amount of hit points because, again, I'm not super worried about concentration on this build, and we will kind of see why as we go forward. All right, at level 2, we are going to be Paladin level 2, and we get Paladin Smite. So we have the Divine Smite spell always prepared and can cast it once per long rest at level 1 for free. And we get our fighting style, and I'm going to pick Archery. We also get a third prepared spell here. I would probably prepare Command because, again, this is going to be a more support and control-oriented build, although you could prepare something like Searing Smite if you want more damage. Now, minor spoiler here, we're going to be sticking with Paladin all the way to level 6. A Warlock dip for something like Pact of the Blade could be nice, especially if you want more damage, but I don't really feel the need here. Prepare what you want to prepare. Remember, we can swap out one spell per long rest. Bless is probably our best concentration option, and Divine Favor is our best personal damage per round booster for spell slots. Now, that said, even though we're a range build, we can actually smite with our daggers, whether melee or thrown, and that is because of the wording of the Divine Smite spell and all of the smite spells that have been updated. So in their casting time box, it says that we cast them as a bonus action, which we take immediately after hitting a target with a melee weapon or an unarmed strike. Now, because a dagger is a melee weapon, as are any kind of thrown weapons, we can still apply our smite spells to them when we throw them. So this will be important when we want to boost damage either with Divine Smite or a spell like Searing Smite. Now, of course, the dagger does not have a very long thrown range. I believe your normal range is only 20 feet when throwing them. So you're going to have to be at relatively close range if you want to use the I'm going to shoot my bow and throw a dagger for maximum damage per round output. So you don't necessarily need to use the dagger tactic. And if I was playing a real game, I probably wouldn't use it all that often. But if you want to boost damage, it is a very valid tactic to do, and I'll talk about that a little bit more once we're at level 6. At level 3, we are going to be a Paladin level 3, and we got our subclass. I'm going to go with Ancients on this build, namely because our Channel Divinity and Nature's Wrath is a really good control option. It basically, in a whole area around us, enemies have to make a save or become restrained. It's very good. Ensnaring Strike also works with ranged weapons. It's one of our subclass spells. And Speak with Animals is a ritual, which means we can cast it without spending a spell slot. And since everyone can do that now, and that is great, and we can prepare a 4th spell here. Pick whatever you want. I might prepare here Heroism here. At level 4, we're going to be a Paladin 4, which means we get our first ability score increase or feat. And I'm going to take the Fey Touched feat, boosting our Charisma to 18. Now, we get a first level spell of our choice that can be, I believe, Enchantment or Divination. I'm going to pick Gift of Alacrity, as we talked about. This gives us a once per long rest casting of this spell for free, and then we can cast it with any spell slots we may have. And the same is true for the Misty Step spell. Now, what Gift of Alacrity does is it lasts for 8 hours, and the creature that you bless with it gets to add an extra d8 to their initiative as long as it's up. So if you can't use Gift of Alacrity to get, if you can't use that spell at your table, my top recommendations are Inspiring Leader to give everyone in your party temporary hit points, or the Warcaster feat to fortify your concentration and also boost your charisma. Again, I'm planning on using Gift of Alacrity, but if you can't, I would probably take Inspiring Leader. All right, next up at level 5, we are at Paladin 5, so we get extra attack. Now at this point, for maximum damage, what you want to do is fire your range weapon once, take a hand off if it's a two-handed, and then you want to throw a dagger and then throw another dagger with the Nick Mastery. And that is kind of the way that you can get 3 attacks just by chucking daggers, and you could potentially smite on those dagger tosses. Additionally, if you have Divine Favor up, 2 dagger tosses, even though you're only going to be adding your dexterity once, is worth more than a single bow shot. We also get our Faithful Steed here. We get the Find Steed spell always prepared, and we can cast it once for free per long rest. Now, Find Steed is a massive mobility enhancer and provides another body on the field. I'm not going to be accounting for the damage it can output. It was nerfed in terms of its damage under the 2024 rules, and I would very likely use the Fey version for the teleport. Again, the horse from this is not applicable in all dungeons. And, we also get Misty Step and Moonbeam from our subclass here. We already have Misty Step from the feat, but Moonbeam is a decent spell, especially if you want to do some kind of AoE sustained damage. There are a lot of good second level Paladin spells that we get access here to, like Aid. Warding Bond is a fantastic kind of tank spell, and something like Prayer of Healing, which can potentially give your entire party a short rest, at least the benefits of one, in 10 minutes. I would prepare some or all of these spells if I could with my 6 prepared slots. They have some excellent support and utility potential. That said, if you want damage, you should probably be preparing Searing Smite and potentially applying that on dagger throws or melee attacks when you need more damage. At level 6, we are going to be a Paladin 6, which means we get our Aura of Protection, which we and everyone within 10 feet of us get to add our Charisma modifier to all of their saving throws as long as we're not incapacitated. And even though this is the only feature that we get at this level, it's one of the best features in the entire game. That +4 to all of our saves and those of our allies is incredible. So with our high mobility, at least when we have our steed and our range, we should be able to move to kind of keep our most vulnerable allies inside of our Aura of Protection. All right, so here at level 6, it is time for our first tactics report. Now, one of the things here, again, is I didn't design this build to be a super high damage dealer, so while I did the damage calculations, I'm not going to go into much detail on them here. I'll include some numbers for the sake of comparison, which I'll use in the build spreadsheet, which will be linked in the description of this video. The Vex range weapon plus dagger toss tactic is the best option for at-will damage output when combined with Divine Favor, but you potentially can get better damage in the right fight with the right spell, like upcasting Moonbeam. So with that said, the general damage tactic I used is we're going to cast Divine Favor in the first round, we're going to attack with a range weapon, throw a dagger, throw another dagger, and potentially apply Searing Smite if desired in later rounds. Again, this is relatively short range, and our double dagger tactic here is only marginally better than firing the longbow a couple of times, but the advantage is mainly due to leveraging that extra d4 of radiant damage from Divine Favor. So I'm not going to go through the numbers in too much detail after this damage report, although we'll see them again in the end. If you want to see the full breakdown, it's mostly going to be scaling with spell slots. It will be in the spreadsheet in the description of this video. All right, so in terms of our peak damage per round, this is the damage that we get after all of our after we've ramped fully. In this case, it's 31.3 or 25.5 against AC 15. Our max output, this is when we're using all of our spell slots on this build to apply Divine. We're going to use Divine Favor and then Searing Smite, and a Divine Smite. We do an average of 26.2 damage per round over a 4-round combat, and allocating all of our resources over an entire 4 encounter day, which is the way I calculate our daily average. So it's 2 combats, short rest, 2 combats. We do an average damage per round of 19.3 against an armor class of 15. Okay, so if you want more damage on this build, one of the things you can do here is you could potentially have swapped your dexterity and charisma scores and taken crossbow expert, and you could be dual wielding hand crossbows. Again, I'm not building for that here, but there are a few ways you can modify this build for slightly higher damage. Honestly, Bless or Moonbeam are probably going to be better uses of your spell slots to buff your party, especially their saves. And I would likely try to be providing some control and a little damage with longbows and maybe some back pocket daggers and smites on this character in terms of what I would do in a real game. In terms of our initiative, we have a +6 at this point with a D8, potentially with advantage. Now we should be able to have advantage, I would think, pretty reliably from the hide action, which is DC 15. We would have a +6 at this point, so I think it's 60% chance to pass that, and or potentially using our heroic inspiration. If we use the initiative score method to calculate it, so it's going to be 10 plus our initiative +5 if we have advantage. Our score is about 25 at this point, thanks to that D8 and advantage. In terms of some of our other tactics, we can move around with our steed, and there's an interesting tactic we can do here to rescue our allies. So the steed has a base speed of 60 feet. So if we use the steed's action, we can potentially have a speed of 120 feet or 60 feet with a disengage. So one of the things you can do is you can ride up to your ally, you can grapple them with a free hand that you take off your bow, and they can willingly fail that save, and then you can drag them to safety with our steed, swooping in like a gallant savior on horseback. Now this does consume one of your attacks, but it is a valid tactic if you need to ride in and save an ally. Now that's not necessarily a tactic that's exclusive to this character in this build, but it is something that I think this character could be making a decent use out of. All right, moving on to level 7, we are going to multi-class into Bard, and we're going to stay with Bard the rest of the way on this character. So as a first level Bard, we get Bardic Inspiration, which is a D6, and we can use it a charisma modifier times per long rest as a bonus action. We get an extra skill proficiency and an extra proficiency in instrument, pick whatever you want. We get 4 prepared spells here and some cantrips. I would take Vicious Mockery and whatever you want for your cantrips, and then I would prepare things like Bane, Sleep, Tasha's Hideous Laughter, Healing Word, maybe some rituals, and that kind of thing. The ones I listed there are what I might pick in a vacuum, knowing nothing about your party or your game. We went level 8, we had our Bard 2, so we get Jack of all trades, so we can add a half our proficiency bonus rounded down to any skill that we're not proficient in, and then we get expertise in 2 skills of our choice. Now one of them for sure would be stealth here for me, the other one can be whatever you want. The main reason we want stealth expertise is to make our hide action easier for us to get the invisible condition to get advantage on initiative. So at this point, we only need to roll higher than a 5, which is a 75% chance to pass that check. You get another first level spell here. I might pick a ritual, but again, pick whatever you want on your character. At level 9, we are going to be a Bard 3, which means we get our subclass, and I'm going to be taking the College of Dance on my Paladin here. So what we get here, we get Dazzling Footwork. So this gives us Dance Virtuoso. We get like advantage on things, performance checks involving us dancing, more of a ribbon feature here. We get an unarmored defense. So while we're not wearing armor, we can calculate our AC as 10 plus our dexterity plus our charisma. And we are going to want to drop our light armor here and use this feature for our armor class. We get Agile Strikes. So again, while we're unarmored and not wearing a shield, we can use our Bardic Inspiration dice for our damage rolls of our unarmed strikes, and we can use our dexterity in place of our strength and that kind of thing. Agile Strikes also importantly lets us make an unarmed strike whenever we use our Bardic Inspiration. So one of the things here is, as a bonus action now, instead of with your full action on one of your attacks, you could potentially ride up to one of your allies, inspire them, grapple them, and drag them away to safety. You could also inspire an ally and punch an enemy in the face at the same time. Again, our Bardic Inspirations are fairly limited at this point. We have 4 per long rest, so you are going to be wanting using them somewhat sparingly. As for our spells here, we do get second level spells. I would want to have invisibility, which should reliably give us and potentially other allies advantage on their initiative. We are also a 6th level spellcaster here, so we have pretty decent spell slots. All right, so here at level 9, it is time for our next tactics report. Our damage tactics haven't really changed. We can potentially add in a bonus action unarmed strike, but it's not really worth doing most of the time, and it doesn't benefit from divine favor, and it's less damage than a smite. I would really only use it if we're stuck in melee and we need to inspire someone anyway. We can also moonbeam at 3rd level. We can up our damage using smites on tossed daggers, but again, our only real scaling here is from our slots. In terms of our initiative here, we haven't gotten anything other than a higher proficiency bonus, so our score is up to 26, but being able to cast invisibility and stealth expertise means that we should have that an advantage on initiative quite reliably. I would say probably all the time at this point. We can also do our heroic rescue tactic where we ride in and drag our ally to safety as an inspiring bonus action. So overall, we've gained quite a bit of support ability in these 3 levels with our bard spells and abilities, and we've bumped our armor class even though we actually removed our armor. Moving on to level 10, we are going to be a Dance Bard level 4. And we get our first ability score increase or feat, and I'm going to just take +2 Charisma and cap it at 20, which will boost our Aura of Protection, as well as give us our 5th Bardic Inspiration use, and of course, up your spell save DC. We get another prepared spell here. I might take Shatter to have a little AoE damage option. Pick whatever you want, and we might be able to retrain this later. Now, importantly here, we are now a 7th level caster, which means we can upcast Find Steed to level 4, which gives the steed a fly speed. So at this point, our heroic bard support paladin, whatever this character is, can now fly around in their flowing robes and probably glorious hair and protect and save their allies while raining down radiant infused arrows from the sky and maybe some daggers. So overall, very cool at this point. This is a pretty big utility spike in situations where we can actually use our Find Steed. Moving on to level 5, we're going to be a Bard 5, so our Bardic Inspiration jumps to a D8. That is a big deal. We also get Font of Inspiration, which is wonderful. Now we get all of our Bardic Inspirations back on a short rest, and we can potentially convert spell slots into Bardic Inspirations if we need more. And of course, the power of our cantrips goes up here. And most importantly, we do get 3rd level Bard spells. There are a lot of good 3rd level spells. Some of the ones I might consider are things like Dispel Magic and Mass Healing Word for the 2 ones I get prepared here, and maybe retrain something for Layman's Tiny Hut. But that says things like Sending, Slow, Hypnotic Pattern, Fear, Major Image, Plant Growth. These are all very powerful spells on the Bard list. Pick what you need and what suits your character and your campaign best. Moving on up to level 12, we are going to be a Bard 6, which means we get Inspiring Movement and Tandem Footwork. Now, these are some pretty powerful features. Namely, so Inspiring Movement, so when an enemy ends our turn within 5 feet of us, we can, as a reaction, spend a Bardic Inspiration and move up to half our speed, and then let one of our allies move up to half their speed. Importantly, because of Agile Strikes, this will also let us punch that enemy at the same time. So this is nice. We can potentially use that second portion on our horse if we're still mounted to move us out of the way. But the big thing here is Tandem Footwork. So what this does is when we roll initiative, we can spend one of our Bardic Inspirations if we're not incapacitated, and when we do that, we roll the Bardic Inspiration, which is a D8 from last level, and each ally within 30 feet of us who can see or hear us gets that number roll as a bonus to their initiative. So that is huge for us and our allies, and should be able to get our initiative score even higher to hopefully make sure that we can go first and give that turn to a character that can do a lot of damage or provide a lot of control. Moving on to level 13, we are going to be a Bard 7, which means we get Counter Charm. This is a very strong defensive feature. So if an ally within, I believe the range is 30 feet of us, fails a saving throw against Charmed or Frightened, we can use our reaction to cause them to re-roll the save with advantage. And this also works for us. So one of the things here is that I think, if an ally is within our aura of protection, I think they are going to be very unlikely to fail the save on the second time around, because essentially they get to roll their d20 3 times, once initially and then 2 more times on the counter charm. And if they still fail with your aura of protection, bad things are going to happen. Run, probably, gallantly grab them and run away. But this is a very strong defensive feature for the party. We also get our first 4th level spells here. I might take something like Dimension Door, but pick your favorites. And again, whatever suits your character best. Here at level 13, it is time for our next tactics report. So our damage tactics again haven't really changed. We might be able to bonus action unarmed attack more freely now thanks to Font of Inspiration, but thanks to Tandem Footwork, I'm going to be spending a bonus action, one of our Bardic Inspirations every combat to boost our initiative. If we really need to throw down damage, we might just want to use a 5th level Moonbeam. But you could keep smiting if you need damage on your dagger tosses, if that's a tactic that you're using. With your high speed from your flying horse, you can probably kite in and out of range to do that fairly safely. In terms of our initiative here, we are at +8 with +2d8 with advantage. One of those d8s is from Gift of Alacrity on ourselves. The other one is from our Bard 6 feature. This gets us to a score of approximately 32, which means our bonus to initiative here on average is +17 with advantage. This hopefully should be more than enough to easily win initiative at this point. And as you can see, even though I haven't min-maxed for a high initiative score, this is still quite high. We also have what I think about a 95% chance to pass a DC 15 stealth check at this point, so that advantage should be even easier to obtain. You can still use invisibility and that kind of thing as well. In terms of our tactics, we can still do that heroic rescue and do it much more often. We've capped our aura protection, we've got counter charm, we've got that 10 footwork, and we have 3rd and 4th level bard spells. So overall, in these last 4 levels, we have gained a lot, and our support abilities continue to ramp and build. Level 14, we would be a Bard level 8, and I'm just going to take +2 Dexterity and bump mine to 18. However, there are a lot of other solid options here. You could take Resilient for your Constitution if you really needed to boost that. I would like to think that since we may not be concentrating on spells all that often, and we have Aura of Protection, we have a +6 to this save already, which is pretty good. So I'm not sure Resilient is super needed there. You could potentially take Great Weapon Master for more damage if you were using a longbow, or you could take Mage Slayer to further fortify your mental saves, although I think with Aura of Protection and proficiency in Wisdom and Charisma saves, you're probably not failing those all that often. Another option here is if you took Warcaster or Inspiring Leader last time instead of +2 Charisma, you could take the other one here and cap your Charisma at this point. Not knowing what your game would be like, I'm just going to say take +2 Dex. It'll boost our attack, our damage, and our armor class, and our initiative, which is great. We also get some more 4th level spells here. Pick whatever you want. I would probably take something like Polymorph or Ralathim Psychic Lance. Those are both very powerful and can provide damage and control in the case of the Lance, or potentially a save on an ally with Polymorph. Moving on to level 15, we are a Bard 9, which means 2 more expertise. Pick whatever you want. We should have already had Stealth expertise, which is the most important one for this build mechanically. We also get 5th level spells here, and 5th level spells are really powerful. The ones I might prepare here are Greater Restoration, Yolanda's Regal Presence, and then maybe do a retrain for Synaptic Static. But again, there's a lot of really strong 5th level spells. These are probably the ones I would pick blind in a vacuum. At level 16, we are going to be a Bard 10, which gives us a D10 Bardic Inspiration dice, as well as Magical Secrets. So from here on out, we can pick spells from the Bard list, the Cleric list, the Wizard list, or the Druid list, and this is a very, very powerful feature. We also get another cantrip, pick whatever you want, but from here on out, it is time to retool the spell list. There are so many good options now. You should honestly be retraining one of your spells per level, as well as learning new ones. So the ones I'm going to pick here, Wall of Force is an extremely powerful control spell, so I'd almost certainly take that, and then I would retrain one of your other spells for potentially Conjure Minor Elementals or Shield. Now, pick up Conjure Minor Elementals if you want to boost your personal damage per round output with our same tactic that we've been using. So shooting your bow and then chucking a couple daggers. But honestly, I feel like something like Summon Dragon would probably be way better for your personal damage output if desired. But that said, I will be showing some numbers here at level 17 for what your damage would look like if you were going to use Conjure Minor Elementals. Finally, at level 17, we are a Bard 11, which means the power of our cantrips goes up, and we get to learn a 6th level spell. Now, the one I want here is Tasha's Bubbling Cauldron. I love this spell. I think it's really cool. This lets us pull a number of potions out of this cauldron equal to our charisma modifier, and they last until we use the spell again. It's a really good spell, especially with 20 charisma, 5 potions. So there's a potion that gives every member of your party freedom of movement for 8 hours. I would probably be using that here at this point. And then maybe do a retrain for another strong spell like Hero's Feast or maybe Mass Suggestion if you need control. Now, if you want maximum damage output, I would save some of your potions for Potions of Enlarge for yourself, but I'm not going to be including this in our personal damage. Again, as this character is not built for that, we are a support with some control ability and healing and that kind of thing, and just this overall character that boosts initiative, and then hopefully that will, combine with our support abilities, will help other characters have the limelight and help our party overall win the encounter. All right, so here at level 17, it is time for our final tactics report. So in terms of our damage tactic, if you want maximum damage output, you should have taken Conjure Minor Elementals. So in the first round, you're going to cast Conjure Minor Elementals at the highest level you can with your action, and then cast Divine Favor with your bonus action in round 2. You're going to attack with your ranged weapon, throw a couple daggers using the Nick Mastery, and smite if desired. So in terms of our peak damage per round calculated using this tactic, this is our damage from round 2 and on, doing, I think, 4th level Searing Smites. We have a peak damage per round against AC 10 against 115.5, and against an armor class of 18, it's 96.8. If we are going to be doing an encounter where we use as many resources as possible, our average damage per round over the course of 4 rounds is 68.6 against an armor class of 18. Now, one of the reasons why this is lower, again, is because we spent that first round casting Conjure Minor Elementals and therefore did no damage. And our daily average, if we use all of our high-level spell slots that we can over those potential 4 encounters per day, so 2 combats, short rest, 2 combats, our daily average in this case would be 56.9 damage per round. This damage per round numbers are by no means good, but again, this is a character that is not built for that, and I only computed these numbers so you could get a glimpse of it, of how you could take things if you took this support-oriented character and you dumped all their spell slots in damage, which again, I don't see you doing all the time. And personally, I would probably pick a summon spell. I think the damage would be a little bit more reliable and you could kind of do your thing a little bit better. Holy Weapon is also a decent option if you want to buff someone else's damage. And again, I would be focusing on other people's damage or control and support over my personal damage. Making attacks with our Divine Favor still beats using cantrips in terms of raw damage, so I would probably again be making those shots with our bow with Divine Favor, and maybe closing the range and chucking daggers if we needed some more damage per round. In terms of our initiative at this point, we have plus 10 thanks to our dexterity and our proficiency bonus, as well as a d8 from Gift of Alacrity and the D10 from our Bardic Inspiration, and hopefully advantage. So we actually haven't been able to fail hide checks of a DC 15 since level 14, and our initiative score at this point would be 36. This is quite a high effective score. We basically have plus 21 with advantage on average to our rolls. We should be able to boost our key player into the first turn pretty darn reliably at this point. I believe this score is enough to beat most of the monsters in the monster manual. Of course, that's if you're playing with initiative score. I have no way of knowing exactly what you roll when you actually roll initiative. But I think this should be able to compete with and beat those with a decent amount of consistency if you're fighting high CR monsters at this point. We also, at this point, have gained 5th and 6th level spells, as well as magical secrets, and we can pretty much tool our spell list from this point how we want, and are very flexible. The biggest gains we've made in these last 4 levels are honestly the spells. Again, Tasha's Bubbling Cauldron is a standout for me, but there are so many strong options for control or damage available from magical secrets with those 4 class spell lists. All right, so it is time to summarize and talk about this build as a whole. So what is the overall score of this build? So it's something again, I'm kind of hesitant. I was hesitant to even run damage numbers on this build because its biggest impact is not damage. But here it is anyways. So the overall score of this build, if I look at their peak damage per round, is 55.8. If we look at our average for our overall score for our max output encounters against the high armor classes only, it is 41.9. And for our daily average against those 4 round combat encounters against the high AC marks, this is 33.6. Again, you could very easily build a higher damage version of this build, but you will sacrifice some support ability and or durability. And again, if you want the full damage progression, see the spreadsheet in the link below. Being able to smite on thrown daggers does go a long way when we want to be able to contribute damage with this build. You can basically chuck a dagger, it ignites with holy light or flames and does some extra damage. And that, again, that is a good way to use your excess spell slots to provide a little bit more damage without having to spend much in terms of resources. All right, if I was going to take this build to 20, what would I do? So I would probably go Paladin 7, Bard 13. Now, you may have been wondering why I didn't take Paladin 7 at all throughout the course of this build. And that is because the Ancients Paladin 7, it gives you resistance to 3 specific damage types. I believe it's Necrotic, Radiant, and Psychic. Um, I would really only take this level if you're going to be facing those in your campaign. If you see frequent amounts of those damage types, I would probably take it at level 7, honestly. But if you don't see it at all, I might never take it at all. But doing this 7-13 split will give us 7th level Bard spells, and if we line it up so Bard 12 is level 19, which will mean that we still get an epic boon, and we again still get those 7th level magical secrets for something like Simulacrum if it's allowed and that kind of thing. All right, other ways you could build a high initiative character, just to kind of toss a few other ideas your way. So you could do a version of this build with potentially more Bard. You could take a single level of Paladin for the Weapon Masters and that kind of thing, and then just go straight into Bard, maybe with a Warlock level or 2 if you want the Invocations. This would be a decent melee option, probably with Valor Bard, I would think, and you would go Charisma forward with this build. You'd have Searing Smite to chuck on for some extra damage. Another way that you could do this with this particular version with more damage, you could dip Battlemaster and Swashbuckler on your Paladin and do some sneak attacks and maneuvers and that kind of thing. Replacing Bards with the Marshals would yield better Marshal damage, but of course worse support. This is a version that would definitely run Great Weapon Master. The other things you can do the classic Battlemaster Gloomstalker. You can do a Wisdom forward Stars Druid with Gloomstalker, that kind of thing. All kinds of cool things you can do to have high initiative, and I think these are all pretty cool, and then maybe the things I'll explore in the future. One of the things I thought about doing one for this build that I wanted to present was that Stars Druid Gloomstalker, but as I was planning it out, it felt very similar to the Maelstrom Walker build I did. That was a couple months ago now. I know it's been a while. As another kind of Wisdom forward spell sword build, so I wanted to save that one because it was kind of similar to one I did relatively recently. But that one again does look pretty cool. All right, so thanks for watching. What do you think of this build? How well do you think I executed our initiative support build around the alert feat? I think this one was interesting and pretty fun to design. And this is a concept that is opened up by clever use of the tough feat to kind of get around that multiple attribute dependence you have from multi-classing a paladin and wanting to have a high dexterity. And going forward, if there's any other builds you'd like me to cover, please let me know in the comments and I would be happy to oblige. Once again, my name is Nathan. Thank you for watching. I know it's been a long time since I've uploaded a video. My summer has been very busy, but I appreciate all of you that have subscribed in the meantime, and I hope to see you next time.